Hey everyone, and thanks for joining us for our daily semifinal recap show. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. We have Brian Friend and Greg Lanctot here to recap day 2 of Atlas games. A lot of shift ups going on the leaderboard. The men's field especially, it's going to be anybody's game going into day 3. Greg, how's it been being on the floor, seeing the atmosphere after day 2?
Oh, it was electric. I mean, yesterday, Nicholas Joyal had a perfect day. We talked about that, and seeing just a heat, the final heat in the event number 1, and on the men's side, Patrick Vellner, Jeffrey Adler coming right out of the gates under 2 minutes, 30 muscle ups under 2 minutes, and you could feel like they were sending a message. They knew they were the favorites. They put on a show. And also on the women's side, seeing Emma Lawson, she's outstanding, 17 years old. And we got a great surprise as well on the team's great battle. And to round out the day, I don't know if you saw that lift from Jack Farlow. Wow,
Oh,
that
yeah.
kid is a strong dude. All of his family were in the stands looking at us like, yeah, this is our
Incredible.
DNA. Super
That's
happy.
what we love to see. Yeah, the atmosphere, the vibe, especially with those lifts. But let's actually start with the team side. Starting with event 3. Here we go again with a relay style event. Is this a type of workout that we should get used to seeing in team competitions? And how do you guys each feel about seeing that, especially in the semifinal stage? Brian, we can start with you.
Yeah, no, it seems like it's showing up once a competition at this point, and it's interesting that it's in there when you also have a lift that's very individually tailored event. You have one athlete there on the time for the lifting, and in an event like this, yeah, sometimes some of them have like a gatekeeper waterfall style variation, but it's basically one person working through something, and then the next, and the next, and the next, and you can get very exposed or very rewarded individually. So I think that maybe one workout like that out of 6 might be more appropriate than 2. And then you see Atlas Games has only one workout with the worm, which we also have seen at other semifinals. I would probably prefer to see 2 worm-style workouts and one where it's just purely individual work required.
Greg, how do you feel about that programming style, especially as somebody who's like there in live in-person competition?
No, especially as someone who used to compete on this stage of competition on a
Oh
team.
my God, Brian,
That
come on.
too.
You know what happened last time I competed was at East Regional in 2016, and my team placed 29th, bro. I mean,
Still
I don't,
relevant. Still
I don't,
relevant.
I still don't deserve having my name put on the same page as what these athletes have been accomplishing all day long, all weekend long, for that matter. I mean, to put on a show, I think was the best show of the weekend so far for teams. And regarding programming, I think the CrossFit Games have done a tremendous job over the years to actually provide programming that will expose any weakness you have on any partner of the team. So, does that workout belong in a programming in a team competition? Absolutely yes. And should we have more? I mean, I'm an MC. I love a good show, so I'm going to say yes, of course. Do we need 6 events like this? Probably not, but 1 or 2 won't be too much, in my own humble opinion. Um, I mean, all the teams, and also on the floor, the energy is just magic. Seeing every single teammate cheering on one another, and also all the other teams looking at one another, wanting to close the gaps. And I think it brings out the best in every single athlete on the floor, wanting to beat the other teammate or wanting to chase the other that's in front of them. Um, you can, yeah, what's not to love?
Brian, when we look at a team like Milford, they had a bad finish relative to the top 2 teams. They finished 10th in this workout, but the top 2 teams, Pro1 and Omnia, they are now much closer to that cut line than they were when they were sitting closer to the top of the podium. Do you have any concerns that this event put them in the wrong direction, or was this just a bad workout for the whole weekend for them, do you think?
Milford, yeah, this was this one stands out amongst the others, but they were able to rebound really nicely with the lifting event and put
Mhm.
themselves right back in the mix. And I think every team has had a little bit of a dip at some point, other than really East Woodbridge, but they're just lacking the home run that the other teams have hit. So it's actually ending up to be a fairly close competition amongst the top contenders, and there's a little bit of a gap more around the bubble.
Greg, for you, how much of a statement was it for Chloe, Gavin, David, and Pro1 Montreal to outduel Omnia in this event?
It was one hell of a statement. I mean, it's the home team, it's the local heroes. They absolutely wanted to get an event win to send a strong message on Saturday. They were, I think, equal standings in after day one. Sorry about that, but sending in and winning. It's actually fun to have someone behind me just turn around like this. All right. Sorry, I was out of focus for a few seconds, but the message they sent by winning this event in a dominating fashion, it was just stellar. And okay, so am I going to keep talking while you guys
You are. Brian is derailed from the distraction right now.
What is going on, Brian? This is a serious episode here. Okay.
I know,
it's late. He's got the giggles. It's just
between the interruption of the background and I don't know if I would call it dominating. I mean, it came down to the last 10 feet of handstand walking. It was very dramatic.
It was dominating for me. Okay.
And for everyone else from Montreal.
You were at your computer.
It was. I thought the question was it dominating compared to Milford's performance in that event?
Well,
is that the question, Brian? Okay, thank you.
It was just more of a statement overall, but that's okay. We can move on. But speaking again about Milford, they didn't have a great start to the day. Brian, they had a phenomenal finish when it came to the snatch. Devin O'Neill from CrossFit Milford, he lifted 295 on the women's side for them. Middleton, she lifted 205. They looked so excited about that. What does that say about the team seeing the men and women's strength be so dominant?
Yeah, I mean, this team just jumps off the page in terms of a lifting event. Emma Ferreira also cleared the ladder, and those three alone are just really, really strong lifters. Obviously, Middleton, had a record last year. She's matched a record this year, I think, in the snatch event. And, she's right. When you're able to put a 25-pound jump on one lift, like that passes a lot of teams by. So there's no surprise that this team's on first on an event like this.
Greg, when you look at what some of the other teams did any of the athletes surprise you on the men or women's side from the teams?
Well, on the women's side, we had another lifter, local lifter from CrossFit SAG, who also lifted 205. She was actually the first, I think, in the first heat, lifting that barbell, and then having CrossFit Milford match that weight. We didn't think anyone could match that weight, and then she did, and looked so confident doing so. That was very impressive. And on the men's side, you said that lift at 295 was actually very impressive. And Thomas Markhauser, also from CrossFit 1855, attempted that barbell twice, if I recall, and did a pretty good job all ladder long, and it was very impressive on the men's side, actually, for me.
When we move on to the women's side, another impressive day and some surprises with some of the athletes. We'll pull up the leaderboard here. Brian, when we look at Lawson taking a lead early on in event 3, she seemed to be in control until the very end when Powers nearly chased her down on that barbell. What's the more critical movement in a movement or in a workout like this for women? Is it the rings or is it in fact the barbell?
Yeah, it's a kind of a clever design because you can, do really well on the ring muscle ups, and then we'll see how well you cycle the barbell. Generally, you would expect maybe a more bodyweight athlete to manage 30 ring muscle ups in one set a little bit better, but then they have that barbell to deal with, and on the short bars that they were using, it feels even heavier. And so that's basically exactly what we saw. It was Lawson, who's good on the gymnastics, get out to a lead, and Paige Powers make her move on the barbell that she moves really well. And I think I have to give the nod to the muscle ups, though, because in both the men's and women's fields, the ones that were able to get out in front were able to maintain, even though not a big lead, they were able to maintain a lead.
Greg, when we look at an athlete like Tori Dyson, this was her best finish of the day, getting 4th overall. How, if any, does her placement there shift up the leaderboard?
Oh, that performance was very impressive, and she needed to put that statement as well to grind up on the leaderboard. And like we spoke yesterday, some of these athletes needed to make these kind of moves in their event that they were probably a little more comfortable with. And I don't want to shift to the men's side, but Cedric Lapointe did the same thing. That's exactly what we were expecting from him. So seeing Tori Dyson put up that time, and then seeing these athletes trying and chase her down, we saw that in the final heat. It was very, very impressive, and I'm sure it put some pressure on both Emma Lawson and Paige Powers.
And moving on to workout number 4 for the women today, Greg, 230 pounds for Gabby Acker. That would have won her 4 other semifinals. And she takes the win between her and the second place Sabrina Gordon, who put up 225. Who are these women, and are they just specialists in the lifting field?
I don't know much about these athletes, unfortunately, Lauren. I wish I could have a more precise answer for you, but if they put on that weight on the barbell, my guess is that they would be a specialist. That's for sure.
Brian, any insight for us?
Not much on Sabrina Gordon, actually. Really couldn't find anything that would suggest that this was possible. But Gabrielle Acker put up 240 pounds in the clean and jerk back in 2018 in the 18.2A event. So she has had, she's 27 now. She was 23 then. So she's had this relative strength capacity for several years. And even though we haven't necessarily seen her at high level competitions, there is one data point, at least in the past, that suggests she's fairly strong.
And then right under them, we have Paige Powers, who was able to put up 220 pounds rather, getting her third. They were all power cleans. She's been very consistent all weekend long. Is this where she needs to be heading into day 3?
I think that, yeah, obviously second place is a great place for her. I still think that she may struggle on one event tomorrow, but with what she's done so far, she's built herself quite a buffer that even if that happens, she should be in a pretty good position. And I'm fully expecting her to remain in the top 5 come end of the competition.
At the beginning of the show, Greg, you mentioned Emma Lawson. I personally was really impressed to see her tie 6th in this event at 212 pounds, like on the floor, seeing her, seeing the crowd and just the overall atmosphere.
All the crowd now is behind Emma Lawson. She's gained the heart of the crowd, and even though she's not local here to Montreal, I think that people are very happy to see such a young Canadian that is doing so well. She rose in popularity right here in Canada. I think people thought they were going to see her still compete in the teens division this year, and she chose to actually get her chance for an individual place here in the top 5, and she's dominating. And she got how many event wins on the leaderboard? She has 376 points out of 400. Yeah. She is dominating. Can I say that word again in this episode? Dominating with Paige Powers, 2 young competitors. And every time you say her name, every time people see her compete, achieve something, the crowd goes so wild here, and everyone is cheering for her. And I think that tomorrow, if we can crown her the Atlas Games champion and punch her ticket to Madison, it's going to be a very, very emotional moment here.
Yeah, for sure. Somebody else who we've been talking about that has been in the mix for a while now is Allison Scudds. She took 17th, though, on this event, which really hurt her placing going into the final day. She missed the jerk on her second lift at 207, dropping down to 205 to get her last lift, which she looked really excited about. But Brian, what does this really say for her hopes in punching that ticket to the CrossFit Games?
I don't think that she's gonna give up going into the last day. We've been talking about how we've seen these crazy comebacks, but you just look at her event finishes, 16th, 13th, and 17th just doesn't sound like the type of event finishes of someone who's going to make the CrossFit Games. And we even saw an example last week of an athlete who had a worst finish of 7th and didn't make the games. So these are too many events outside of the top 10 for someone who we thought would be in contention here. I do still think she can have a good day tomorrow, and possibly fight for that last chance qualifier. But I think this is probably not the place she expected to be in after 2 days.
Sure. Finally, moving to the men's field, it looks like the leaderboard is finalized on the game's website here. Let's start with event 3. Greg, Cedric takes heat 2 and wins that heat rather. How bad did he need this after a rough start on event number 1 this weekend?
Well, he definitely needed that kind of performance. And I mean, Cedric has that capacity, and he always had to grind and dig deep in the pain cave. And you could tell on the competition floor that every snatch, he wanted to hold on to these barbell and get them fast to set the time, set the pace for the favorites going on the heat after him. And that's exactly what he did. Mm-hmm. He hold on to the last snatches, didn't let the pain slow down his pace, and it paid off. He placed 3rd overall, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, 3rd overall in that event, setting the pace, climbing back up on the leaderboard, and he's still in the mix now going on day 3. So Cedric just went into what is one of his strengths, and that is definitely his mental game.
Sure. Brian, I want to go back to a conversation that was had. Vellner said to Adler after they finished 1st and 2nd, quote, very different approaches. So going back to our earlier conversation, does Vellner, his prowess on the rings and Adler's closing speed on the snatches suggest that the answer to if the rings or snatches matter more, that it really depends?
Yeah, I actually thought the Vellner's interview response to this question was pretty insightful. And basically what he thought was, if I get out to a lead early and have a couple reps to play with on the barbell, that I can just match his pace, and that's all I need to do to win the event. So, I think he probably, he admitted that he was going to be good on the rings, and he knew that Jeff can move a barbell well. So it was very similar to the girls, and I think that, kind of got fortunate to get an insight into the way that an athlete thinks about that, maybe prior to and during the workout as well.
Well, and speaking of some of that insight, yesterday you kind of talked about how Velner might have taken a few risks. You didn't know that for sure, but that's kind of the vibe you were getting. But then it is, in fact, he is taking risks. How did you know that? And what are your thoughts about him actually admitting to this?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of speculating that might be the case because of what happened in workout 2, where he kind of faded in the back half. I mean, he still had a great finish. And then he talked about it again with Mike Arsenault in his interview. And he said, this is a place where I feel like I can take risks, and I'm confident that I'm going to make it to the games either way. You don't get a lot of opportunities to do this stuff in live competition. But that confidence is something that's reserved for very few athletes. Most people have to be really focused on maximizing everything to get the points needed. And we've talked about how critical execution has been at many of these competitions, and a couple of mishaps here or there keep people out. Vellner's, his resume speaks for himself. In this format, he's got 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and he makes it to the games where he consistently is also finishing really close to the top. So it's a big advantage to be good enough to be able to take those risks and have it be not affecting your chances of making the games.
Are you just so dialed into these athletes that you know what's going on without talking to them?
No, I mean, other athletes, Brent Fikowski has talked about doing this at some high-level competitions at time, and I know that him and Pat are close. And just from the way that he did that, this year we've been talking about guys like Dallin Pepper being extremely methodical and closing on every workout. And honestly, Jeff Adler has looked very much like this weekend as well. And so for Pat to kind of do something that he's not accustomed to doing, which is going out fast, seeing if he can hang on, it just had me thinking that maybe he was trying something new.
All right, let's get to that barbell complex with the men. Greg, I can only imagine how electric it was down there. Probably starting right off the bat from heat 1, though, with Drake Lewis putting up 335 pounds for the complex. Tell us about him.
Well, it's always fun to see someone unexpected, get their 15 seconds of fame. And I'm saying that in a good way. No, it's truly in a good way. And there's always in a CrossFit competition athletes that will surprise you every once in a while. I mean, Nick Joyal was probably that surprise yesterday. We didn't think he was going to win 2 events in a row on the first day of competition. And today, Drake Lewis in the very first heat, when we saw him opening with 315 and then going up, and it looked not very easy, but he looked pretty solid on those lifts. We were actually wondering if anyone could actually beat him. So having that kind of competitor on the floor really set the pace. And you saw, I'm pretty sure that it set the pace for Jack Farlow in heat number 2, who put 330.
What was the vibe like for that?
When, I wasn't calling that heat, but when Dylan called that he just moved up to 337 on his second lift, then we knew that he was going for the lead, and it looked so easy. We were like, okay, so where is he going to go? And I think it might be crazy to state that, but I think Jack Farlow went conservative with 347. If you look again at that lift, I'm pretty sure it's going to be all over Instagram and all over YouTube as well. I mean, he didn't even look to break a sweat. He could have, probably take a shot, in my own humble opinion, at Malheiros' record.
Well, it looked so easy, and this was the third best lift across any semifinal with Guy and Anthony Davis.
Yeah, and Drake Lewis's lift 335 would probably put him right about tie for 9th or 10th across all semifinals as well. So we're seeing, 2 of the best lifts that we've seen across all 4 weeks out of these guys.
And we had another 333 lift as well. So, I mean, pretty strong dudes here in Montreal this weekend.
So, Brian, when we're looking at somebody like Jack Farlow, obviously he's strong, but what else does he need to improve on to help minimize some of the other bad performances or not as great performances that he had over the weekend?
Yeah, right. He's got a 1st and a 4th, which is obviously amazing, but he's got a 23rd and a 17th. And the workouts that he didn't do so well on, I'm actually wondering just about maybe his grips when it comes to gymnastic stuff, because he had that big set of ring muscle ups, and then we had nearly 100 toes to bar in one workout, and both those workouts seem to be a struggle for him, and that's kind of the similarity. So, we haven't seen him in a live competition of this caliber before. Obviously, the potential is there on certain elements, but maybe that's one thing that when he looks back at this weekend, he'll prioritize to try to improve for next year.
And then finally, when we look at somebody like Adler, he took 4th, but that last jump, it netted him 0 points. He's trailing Velner by 4, and he's stated that he wants to win, but should he have gone for that 335 to try and gain those 4 points back?
Greg, what do you think? Did you realize that he hit 325? It would have put him 4th, and he went for 330. That wouldn't have passed anyone by. He would have needed to pass that 333 that you just said to get up there. And the 330 still looked pretty routine for him.
Well, if you want me to go get his coach, I could go get Caro right away. It's a good question. It's always, there's that gamble when you compete about taking risks and also be conservative and not, try to take on too much and miss your lift and then falling a bit on the leaderboard. I think Jeff realized his position. He knows he's 2nd overall. Probably, he could have got those points, but at the same time, once again, it's always a risk calculation, and I guess you want to get the most you can by knowing you 100% will nail this complex, and I think that's the decision that Jeff went for.
And I think that they actually made a decision like this at Rogue last year as well, when Guy had hit a lift and then Jeff was already in 2nd and he just hit another lift anyway, and they talked about how for them, in the spirit of competition and just going out there and doing what you're asked to do, that even if it's not going to move me up or down the leaderboard, there's 3 lifts and I'm going to, just give them a go.
Okay, and we're going to start on the men's side today, but who are you guys watching going into the final day? There's some potential for shift ups. Brian, I think you made Greg go first yesterday, so we're going to make you go first on the men's side.
I'm watching a guy that we haven't actually talked about at all in either of the 2 recaps, which is Austin Spencer, who's sitting in 5th. This guy's been close before. He's pretty solid across the board. Good lifting numbers there in the top 10. Got a 16th on the first workout, and he's been getting better ever since. So sneaking into this conversation amongst a lot of guys, kind of unknown or unseen, I should say, but veteran like this in 5th with 2 days to go, maybe he can pull it off.
Greg, who are you watching on the men's side?
Well, since Brian's watching Austin Spencer, I'm going to watch Cedric Lapointe because their fates are tied to one another. That's for sure. I mean, I still remember Austin placing 6th at the East Regional in 2017. That was heartbreaking not to see him actually punch his ticket for the CrossFit Games. But Cedric, if he can get 2 good finishes tomorrow, he's going to still climb that leaderboard and might punch his first ticket, which would be big for a local athlete like him who already went in teams but never individual. So, I mean, you got to watch them both all day racing one another. They'll know. Probably Austin will not play conservative, but watch where Cedric plays and make sure he, doesn't let him slip too far in front of him. And we'll see where it goes. But definitely our eyes will be set on these 2.
All right, Brian, who are you on the women's field for tomorrow?
It's kind of, there's a 50-point gap right now between 5 and 6, which is of course kind of where I want to focus in on. But I think I'm still just curious about Freya. 3rd, 4th, 9th, 4th. I'm kind of waiting for her to do something impressive on the weekend. She's just kind of been sneaking in, and I'm hopeful that we'll see a great performance sprinkled in amongst many good ones sometime tomorrow.
All right, Greg, who are you watching?
Brian stole my name.
Oh man, who's your backup?
I was going to go for Freya Musbrugger as well. I was very impressed by her performance at Wodapalooza, and she's been doing great. And I think she can probably make a splash tomorrow. But if you want me to name another name, Paige Powers, she still could get the win. If you ask me who I would like to see win, of course, Emma. I mean, a fellow Canadian winning here in Canada, but Paige Powers can still give, a good chance to actually win the Atlas game. So we're going to watch that race very, very closely for you guys.
All right, guys. Brian, Greg, thank you guys so much for catching us up to speed on the Atlas Games Day 2. And we'll see you guys tomorrow with who's going to the CrossFit Games. We'll see you then.
Enjoy your pizza, Greg.
I will. I will enjoy my sleep also.